You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, greetings, everyone. This is Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm your host, Doug Thorpe, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about village building. If you don't remember that term from back in the day, somebody famously said it takes a village, but I think it's more than that. It's about mindset, it's about vision, and definitely about leadership. My guest is a gentleman named Jason Butler, and Jason is going to join me and help us understand what this idea of building the right kind of village is all about. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. It's a pleasure to have you on. I want to ask, as I normally do most of my guests, give us a little bit of your backstory. What's your journey been like to get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I spent 20 years in leadership in the nonprofit world, community organizing. I was a pastor for a while, and now I'm working with executives and corporate executives and leadership teams on how do we do leadership in this post-COVID world that seems to be pretty different than the way things were 5 or 10 years ago.
Totally agree with that. And all of my clients certainly echo that same sentiment that the mindset that workers are bringing to the game today has definitely shifted. There's a sense of entitlement, is one way I've heard it described. And the best thing I can do to sum up what I've heard from dozens, if not hundreds, of leaders that I talk to is that the workforce is showing up with a whole different attitude. And as a leader, it's a new challenge. What have you heard from these leaders you're working with?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the same thing I'm working with that I'm hearing. But this is my role, right? This is what I do. And when I hear that, I don't, a lot of times leaderships want to like put the onus back on, responsibility back on the workers. And I'm not that guy. I'm a buck stops here guy. This is on leadership. Everything begins and ends with leadership. And so if we have this sort of derogatory view of our workers that, they're in the wrong and they want too much and they're entitled and they're lazy and like that's our mindset problem. And so we're projecting that onto our employees and they're going to be what we are saying they're going to be, right? And we know this in parenting. We know this in working with kids. If we tell kids that they're no good, lousy, not smart, no good for nothing, they're going to be lousy, no good, good for nothing, not smart. We tell them you are smart and brilliant, strong, courageous. They're going to grow up to be smart, strong, and courageous. And so, so the communication here stems from what we think, comes from our mind and flows out of our mouth. Like, what do we think about? What do we deeply think about our employees? And right now, employees, I think they have every right to say we need things to change, and they have more options than ever. They don't have to grind. Some people do, some people don't, and so like we have this sort of great awakening in as an employee, and like wow, I can demand different situations than I had, and you know what, they have to listen to me because like this is scarce, right? We don't have enough resources to go around. So like I applaud employees, great. And really the challenge is on leadership and how do we adjust and adapt to this new reality where we can thrive, because we can thrive, we just have to adapt.
I agree totally. And, there's been a long age-old saying that even existed before the pandemic that people join companies and quit bosses.
That's right.
And it's a habit thing that has been around. There have been names put on many of the different styles of leadership, but one that prevailed for many years is the thing that now is considered very old-fashioned. It's command and control. It's my way or the highway.
Yep.
That kind of thinking. And boy, I tell you, this new attitude that people are showing up with, they just absolutely will not suffer that command and control structure.
That's right. They won't. Absolutely, they won't. And so, like for me, what I talk about is like the old way is that. The new way, and this is what I write about, is servant leadership. And
Yep.
people are like, what is servant leadership? Does that mean I bring my employees a cup of coffee in the morning? No, 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 no. That means, I use this example of Coach K and his transformation after the one and done rule, and how he was a program coach. It was all about the program. You're going to come in here and you're going to work for the program, and the program's going to make you better. But like after, the times changed and we got these players who just came for 1 year and were gone, and he had to change. And so he adapted and became a player's coach. Instead of a program coach, he became a player's coach. And he said to the players, I'm going to make you the best basketball player you can be. I'm going to get you to the next level. I'm going to use all my talents and resources to help you. And in that process, you're going to help me, and we're going to win together. And so that's really the shift from like, I'm in control and I'm the boss and it's this way or the highway. We move to an employee empowered culture where our like whole demeanor, our whole role is to make our employees better, to give them more opportunities, to help them advance in their career. And if we do that, we're not going to have a retention problem. We're not going to have an attraction problem. People are going to want to come work for you, leader, if you help them be the best that they possibly can be. And like I say, rising tide lifts all ships. And that as they are empowered and they rise and they get better and they're more productive, your profitability is going to go up, your engagement's going to go up, your numbers going to go up, and who's going to get the benefit and credit for it? You are. And so, like, this is what I tell employees: like, move to empowering your employees, a servant-based leadership model.
That has been proven time and time again. And one of the powers that I think a lot of managers, I'm not even going to say leader, I'm going to say managers get stuck on, is the idea that I've really got to press, squeeze, and cajole people to do good work.
Mm.
I argue with my clients that no, that's not the case. That unless you've just really failed at hiring somebody, the people you hire tend to want to do the right thing and they want to do a good job. I was talking to somebody this morning in a run up, prep up for another show. We got into the range and he used the phrase, he said, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to go suck this morning. And no,
Right.
people want to try to feel good about the work they're doing and the effort they're giving. So to your point, I agree 100%. Leaders have to create that environment, and for me, setting up that right environment, first and foremost, is starting with some clarity about purpose, plan, and direction. And, explain to your people what you need, explain what you're going to be about, show them what success looks like.
Yep, absolutely. And this is all about culture, right? We talk a lot about culture. And this is culture building in an organization. Are you going to have a culture where you're going to grind down and use the best of your employees? Like you see your employees as just benefiting the company? Are you going to have a culture where you are empowering, you're uplifting, you are giving the best of the organization to your employees? What our dads probably said, what my dad said, I'm probably your dad said, is like, well, respect has got to be earned, right? I don't just give respect. And like, that's an old way of thinking. Like we're all humans, and every employee you have is full of an incredible amount of experience, wisdom, talent, knowledge, right? And they should be respected on day one for that, for what they bring to the organization. Our employees are spending more time at work than they do raising their own children. They see their bosses more than they do their children. And so let's respect that, right? That's a huge sacrifice they're making for our profitability. And so, yes, I respect you. I am thankful for you. I appreciate you. And I'm going to do my best to make sure that you thrive here and that you're not miserable, right? Like you're happy. You're flourishing. You're not too stressed. Like this is the sort of culture we want to create in our organizations.
Yeah. So, Jason, when you engage with a company owner that admits he's struggling, where do you typically start out talking to them about changes that need to get made?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with them really. When I talk about folks, it starts. What I say is culture. It begins at the top. It's set at the top. It expands in the middle with your employees. But if it's not set at the top, it can never expand in the middle. If it just starts in the middle, like it's going to get squashed at the top. It will never take off. And so, I talk about 5 principles for executives to adopt. And it's really the village mindset principles. And I talk about empowerment, I talk about support, connection, purpose, and social investment. And really the way that these 5 work together, and I go down there and I kind of show people what these are all about, how you can implement pieces of this to really empower your employees, support, connect your employees, give them purpose. And also you're creating social investment where people like want to work. I mean, there's a stat out there that says that the average worker will take $21,000 less a year to work in a place where they feel they have a purpose, where they have, like, they want to work there. They're doing some social good in the world. $21,000 less. Wow. I mean, that's huge. That's not for everybody, but that's average. And so, like, our leadership is empowering that, or it's stopping that. And so really there's where I begin. It's just the mindset of the leader. Like, let's change this from a taker to a giver, to an extractor to an empowerer. That's your role. And, like, it's all self-interest, right? I mean, self-interest is self-interest. So, like, what's in it for me? And that's a great question, because that's true. What's in it for the leader? There's this great book by Dr. Keltner. He's a PhD out of Berkeley. He did this study on power for 20 years, and he came to this conclusion. He said the people who gain the most power in society are the ones that enable others to succeed, that help others. He frames this as the best about us as humans. The people that do the best job of being human and helping others be human, helping others, they're the ones that rise, because people trust them and people want to help them in return, and people, like, want to follow them, and they give them their trust. And so, like, you want to rise as an executive leader, help your people rise, and they're going to give that back to you.
It's such a challenge sometimes to get business owners, and I'm thinking of the entrepreneur that, the guy that got an idea and decided he's going to go build a business around it. It's often hard to get them out from behind the idea and really start looking at the village he started to build. If he or she, to have a viable business, you're inevitably going to have to hire people. You don't get to be $100 million company with one guy in the garage. I mean, maybe there's some of those out there somewhere. I've never met one or heard about it. But as soon as you start hiring people, you run into all of these issues about trying to be human, trying to be a good leader. I was told a story. Another coach friend was sharing this with me on another episode, as a matter of fact, and she said she knew an entrepreneur, started a good-sized business up in New York, had 16 or 18 employees. Things were rocking along. I mean, they were hitting numbers and seeing growth and seeing advancement, new market share, all that. And one day, one of the senior people, most trusted employees, came to him and said, "Hey, we're rocking and rolling. Can we just take a break and go to a coffee shop down the street? Have an afternoon break?" The owner goes, "That's an awesome idea. Let's go. Let's shut it down, everybody. Let's go down. We're good." They go down to this coffee shop, and lo and behold, it wasn't just to have coffee, but some of the employees had kind of gotten together, and it became an intervention. And they said, "Hey, boss, while we're sitting here, we've got a couple of things we need to talk about. We think there are some things that we need to ask you to change so that we can do more." And they presented him this little manifesto. Fortunately, this owner had the emotional intelligence to sit back and say, "Oh my God, tell me more.
Yeah.
Tell me more." And he just soaked it in. And he, and one of, as an example, one of them was he apparently had turned out to be a micromanager. And they were telling him, "Stop that.
Yeah.
We're good. We promise we're going to ask you if we've got a question. Otherwise, get out of our way and leave us alone. We know this stuff. We're bought into what you want to do. Just let us run with it." And he did,
Yep. That's fantastic. And that's a great example of the shift, like, there's like ego-based leadership. And if that leader was ego-based, he would have heard that and been offended and like, "How dare you to approach me like I'm the boss, I'm the leader, because in that sense he was the center.
Yeah.
And so if we shift that into an emotional intelligence space, they're the center. The other people are the center, and we exist to help them be better. They don't exist to help us be better. And he understood this, and but kudos on him to have that emotional intelligence. And when we move our ego out of the way, we're able to listen to people, like really listen. What do you have to say? And that doesn't mean that they're right or wrong, but we don't react, right? We just like, okay, I'm going to take that, and I'm going to think about that. Lots of times I've found that when I listen to people, when I listen to my employees and my team, I don't always change what they wanted to change, right? Sometimes I think, nah, we can't do that. They don't quite understand. But the process of listening and being open to that is like they come back and they understand. And I come back to them, I'm like, you know what, I really, really thought about what you said. Well, I can't go all the way with it, but here's some changes that I thought about we could make based on your recommendations. What do you think about this? And immediately they feel empowered, they feel like they're included, they feel listened to, and they're in, right? They're in. And so that's the challenge. That's the goal, is to really get our employees to buy in, to be fully engaged. Because once they're fully engaged, they're going to be more profitable and productive.
Related to what you just said, there's a popular business buzzword that's bubbled up through the pandemic, this thing called psychological safety, building an environment at work of psychological safety. What's your take on that? What do you think that really means both from a leader's and an employee's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. That to me, I talk about this in the Great Resignation. I talk about psychological safety, and really, this term psychological safety comes out of. Let's just think where we are, right? Let's think of the past 3 years. Like, we have been through a nightmare in the last 3 years. We try not to think about it. We're good soldiers. We move on. We just do what we have to do. But like, we've been through a trauma. Like, you remember that 2 years ago, March. We were like, what does it mean to shut down? Like, what does that mean? My kids are at home. I'm not going to work. There's no school. Are you kidding me? And so all of a sudden, our whole lives get thrown in the air like a snow globe. We get shook up, right? And so the brain, I study neurology a lot. I love it, neuroscience. And our brains can't deal with that. That this is something new. Do we fight or flight? We go into immediate stress mode. And so coming out of that 2 years, we are stressed beyond capacity. Look at society, right? You go to the grocery store and people are like beating each other up because somebody skipped the line. Like, that's not us, but we're so stressed. And so now we come into the workplace and our brains are telling us, you have to be safe. You have to find safety because this can't happen again. If this happens, you have to be prepared. This is what our brains are doing to prepare us. And so now we're coming into our workplaces and everything has to be safe. And so what it is our brain saying, I can't operate in this space if I'm feeling overstressed. Psychological safety is being overstressed, is the counter to being overstressed. So that's a challenge of leadership, right? To create systems where we decrease the stress, decrease the unpredictability, decrease the accusations, and increase safety. You're safe here, you're seen, you're known, and you're valued as a human and as a worker. And I'm gonna make sure that in this space, you're not gonna be accused, you're not gonna be hated, you're not gonna be kicked out. You're safe here. And so, like, that's the challenge for leaders, is to create this psychological safety, and that's a center point to the village mindset.
That term, at least the first time I heard it, was related to the now famous study that Google did about their work teams. And the study, interestingly, was actually published in 2018, before the pandemic was ever on our radar. Many of my listeners have heard me talk about this in the past, but real short story. Google looked around and said, our hiring practices are legendary. We get the best of the best. Yet, once somebody comes on board and we put them on a team, not all teams perform at the same high level. Why is that? How can that be? That doesn't make any sense. So they did this study, 2-year study, and they came away with the finding that the number one contributor of higher performing teams was psychological safety.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People had been freed of that threat.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned neuroscience. I have not, I guess, studied it in a formal way as in pursuing a degree, but I do a lot of reading in that area myself. And one of the key things that jumped out at me, that the studies tell us that when you are in that fight or flight mindset and emotion, there's physiological things happening in the brain. Your frontal cortex actually loses blood flow, and that's where your reasoning and your work goes.
Yep.
So without blood flow, you can't be performing at your optimum level if you're in that mode of threat. And back to the whole village mindset and leaders, working hard to create an environment where people do feel safe, they don't feel threatened, they can allow that metaphysical shift in their brain so they can do good work. It's
that's
so
right.
really important.
It is important, and it's science, right? I mean, this is not just like leadership kind of mumbo jumbo. This is hardcore science, and I talk a lot in my book about compassion and the power of compassion for leadership. And so we talk about stress brain, right? So we're decreasing in productivity and thought and speech. Like stress does that to us. It decreases us in every single way. Makes us sick, makes us tired, makes us grumpy, makes us less productive and less creative. But the counter to that, biologically, it's not just me making this up, is compassion. Like we have this vagus nerve that runs through our body, begins at our brain, runs through all our body. The largest nerve in the human body, touches the heart, lungs, the intestines, everything. And when we do a compassionate act, when we do something kind for one another, our brain releases positive hormones all throughout our body. And science has shown the more compassionate acts that we do, it increases our creativity. It increases our speech functionality. It decreases our blood pressure, increases our immune system, and actually makes us more likable to other people. Like a lot of our leaders need that, right? They want to be likable to other people. Let's operate in compassion, because compassion directly counters stress. When we're compassionate, we're not stressed, because the brain is doing its thing. This is biology. This is evolution right at its core. And so what I tell leaders is, as much as you can, think about compassionate acts before you do them. Like, think about them. Think about that time that you did something nice. All right, we're getting into that mindset. All right, now do something nice for somebody else. Be compassionate. Go out of your way. Doesn't take a lot. Science shows us that even the act of giving somebody a fist bump or a high five releases positive hormones for people. I tell people, go around the office. When you do your rounds around the office, you see people at the water cooler, give them a fist bump, right? And like, bam, we're releasing trust. We just engaged in a trust activity. Our brains did. Like, we don't even know. Like, it's subconscious. Our brains just said, I trust you. You're cool. I can trust you. Give people a high five. Science says that teams that give each other more high fives, the more productivity and the better you work together, because the more you trust each other.
I love it. Well, Jason, this is good stuff. I tell you what, we're up on break time. We're going to insert a commercial message here, but when we come back, we're going to dive deeper into this idea of leaders being able to create the right kind of village in your work team. So hang with us. We'll be right back.
Business is all about solving complex problems as fast as you can create them. Become the best problem solver by leading others to greatness too. And the first step is going to DougThorpe.com. Doug Thorpe is known globally for coaching entrepreneurs and business leaders, improving their performance and the work output of everyone surrounding them. You can find health, wealth, and happiness by learning to lead others to health, wealth, and happiness. Go to DougThorpe.com now and order Doug's books or hire him to coach your managers. That's DougThorpe.com.
Hello again, everyone. We're back. You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm Doug Thorpe, and today I'm visiting with Jason Butler. We're talking about leaders being able to create the right kind of village at your work. And I'm going to say right now, because part of what's going through my mind, somebody in my audience is sitting there, what the heck is Doug talking about village? I hate that word. I don't like it, but I'm going to ask you to hang with us and kind of hear us out. And then at the end, if you want to make judgment, then so be it. And I'll take all your letters. But I think it's important, the things we're talking about here, and we hit on a lot of them in the first half. We're going to lean in and hit a couple more. So, Jason, we were talking in the green room. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. One of the big elements that challenges leaders sometimes is the age-old skill of being able to communicate. How does your communication as a leader change if you're going to be an advocate for building the right kind of village?
Yeah, so I talk to leaders, and there's like this shift. We know, right? We know the golden rule. Right? We learned this. We learned the golden rule. Do unto others as we would have them do to us. Right? If you went to Sunday school, you learned that. It's ingrained in our history, in our society. But there's a problem with that, with the golden rule. It makes me the center of the world. It says everybody wants to be treated and communicated with like I want to be treated, right? That's not that's not right. People want to be treated differently than I want to be treated, and so we talk about the platinum rule, which the platinum rule is do unto others as they want to have done to them, right? So like we put them first, and so I talk about in my book, I talk about platinum communication and learning how people want to be communicated with. I mean, some people are just like all business. Like I don't want to have a meeting. I don't want to have a relationship. I just want you to tell me the three things I need to do today, and I want them done. But we have other people who want that connection, right? They want to feel the connection. We have some people who want to be appreciated, and to be appreciated is the most important thing. Some people just want to hang out. We know those people. Like I just want to grab a beer with you after work. Let's grab a beer. Then I'm good, right? So when we talk about platinum communication, this is really key for leadership to really kind of understand to some degree how our people function. And I like have a test. I talk about it in my book that it really gives 5 communication languages, and so really honing in to how people want to be communicated with. Then I know, right? If one of my employees really needs to be appreciated, that's how I start my day with them. I go to them and I say, "Hey, Sally, I really appreciated what you did here. This report was right on, and here's how it made my life better. Here's how it benefited the company. Boom, boom, boom. And so let's think about today. Here's what I need from you today. Can we do this?" So like, oh wow, it changes the whole dynamic, right? I began with appreciating her. Some people don't need that. Some people need to feel like I care about their life. I go to them. I'm like, how's your puppy? You got a puppy? Tell me about your puppy. What's going on? How is it? You get any sleep? Or you had a baby, or their son's in football. Like, hey, tell me about how's your son doing? How was the game the other night? Okay, cool. Now we've opened up the pathway of the brain. They got what they needed, and now I can come in and be like, okay, what about Thursday? How are we going to get to where we need to be on Thursday? Let's walk me through that. And so like, bam. And so like really kind of helping people to that's psychological safety. That's opening the brain up where they feel safe. And now we can get done what we need to get done.
That sounds very similar. I'm remembering a book from the 80s, and now I'm drawing a blank on the author, but it was the one that presented us with the 5 love languages.
Yes. Absolutely.
It was a couples deal primarily, but I can recall as a manager and leader in the business I was in at the time, it was banking, but I took that book and I thought about that in respect to my staff. I thought, this explains why people react differently to different things. And if you're listening out there and you're a leader and you're struggling with this, you've got a vision and a pathway you're on, and you're putting out this information, communicating, but you feel like 3 out of 5 of your people aren't getting it, you're probably not talking their language.
That's right.
And it's back to this whole thing of what motivates people. And it was a powerful learning. And I don't know that I remember the 5 pieces. I know it's acts of kindness, gifts.
Yep.
Gifts of love. Some people like getting gifts. That's the way they feel loved. If somebody gives them a gift, other people want to serve others. So if you give them a gift, they now feel bad. They don't feel good. They feel bad because they want to go do something. So that's the way that dynamic plays out.
Yep, absolutely. And that's really what my communication languages are based around, are those five languages. And so kind of moved those over into how we communicate as leaders.
So powerful. And I think it gets back to maybe tying a couple of dots together here. A lot of my clients will tell you that we've had discussions about, as a leader, you got to be sensitive to how your people are showing up every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of work with clients centered on the Maslow's hierarchy of need.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And back that bottom rung in Maslow is kind of that lack of that psychological safety.
Yep.
You're fearing for life and security.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is the people you hire are going to show up day by day in various levels on that hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
Some days they're going to really be on top of their game. They're feeling really pumped. They're excited. They're really ready to get into that self-actualization range, as the grid calls it. But other days, maybe they had a fight with the spouse before they walked out the door, and their mind is halfway across town, and they're really not feeling it, so to speak. Some, when I start usually going down that path with some leaders, they'll immediately recoil and say, that's not my problem. They need to show up ready to go. They need to be in the game. And I'm going, yeah, but how can you help them get back in the game?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I, they kind of like, when I hear people say that, I'm like, but you show up and are grumpy sometimes at work, and you make everybody else's life miserable, right? Because what your kid you walked out the door and you had a fight with your teenager right before you left. Like it's like we have to understand. I think that we're all human, and our employees, life is really, really hard. Life is so hard for folks. Like some people have kids who are going through addiction, right? Teenagers who are going through, they're battling that. Some people are sick and you don't know it. Maybe their spouse is sick, you don't know it. Maybe a parent is dying and you don't know that. Maybe they've had something happen and they're like so much financial insecurity in their life right now that people's lives are so difficult on so many levels. And I think we don't have to be jerks about it, right? What I find is this: it eases so much if we see somebody who's like they're somewhere else, they're not able to do their job today, and just going up to them and saying, "Hey, yeah, I've noticed you seem really stressed today. We're like, what's going on? You want to talk about it? I just want you to know, hey, if you need some PTO, if you need some time off, we have it there. Feel free to take it. If you need to take the afternoon, take it. Like just that act of compassion, and for people to know, like, oh wow, I don't have to hide myself here. You'll get so much more out of people when you just embrace the reality that people's lives are hard and people are going to bring their personal lives to work. None of us can separate and make walls there. Not even our executive leaders, not our CEOs. Nobody can do that. We bring it all with us. And so just recognizing that, embracing it, but also saying, hey, you know what? We know we have a job to do. We know that we have to get these things done. In spite of our life, we have to get those things done. So how can we help you do that?
I agree. Well, I know we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm watching the clock here. I really want to round out this thing. Let's get back to the central theme, building the right kind of village at work. What have we left out so far that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, I think like one thing we talk about, right? I hear some people, some leaders say, or some people like in a company say, well, our company's like a family. And I'm like, no, it's not. If you have to lay somebody off, are you gonna let them live in your guest room for 3 months until they land on their feet? Like, no, you're not gonna do that. Like your company is not a family unless it's literally a family business. But we can be a village. And so this idea of a village really goes back to just a village. It's not about Hillary Clinton. It takes a village like that. That comes from an African proverb, right? And so some people recoil against that idea. This is this idea that we all live and work in a space, and let's embrace collaboration. Let's embrace the reality that we're all connected to one another. And sometimes people are going to leave our company. Sometimes they're going to come back. Some people are going to struggle. Sometimes they're going to thrive. And so how can we create a sort of mindset and a way to see people that helps everyone flourish in the best possible way? Because that's what a village does, right? Like we all have our roles, but we work collaboratively with one another. And so really our workplaces is the only place now in our world that we really connect with people. Like, we live away from family. We're not engaged in religious communities like we used to be. We don't have social activities anymore. Like, we just go to work. That's the only place we can connect with people. And so, like, the workplace is the new village where we can find our identity, where we can live out our purpose, where we can connect with others, and we can work collaboratively towards something good that we're proud of and we get satisfaction for. And so that's really this big idea in the village. And for us as leaders, appreciating people that work in our places where they know they're seen, they're known, and they're valued, both for what they do and who they are. And so those, that's really kind of the mindset shift that I really help people to get into.
And that brings a thought to my mind, not to dissuade anything that you've said, but if anybody's struggling with that word of village because of the former political connotations of it, just think of community, and
Yep.
we are communal animals. We thrive better when we're connected. Nobody really does well isolated and alone. Look at the statistics on criminals that end up in solitary confinement for long periods of time. They actually get worse much more than get better. And the whole idea of creating a thriving community is what I think we're talking about here. And
Absolutely. And that is because we as humans, we evolved. Our human evolution took place in villages. That's where our brains are wired for. That village life, like literally a village life where, 50 people, 100 people live in close proximity, and we're working in close proximity together, and we know our neighbors and they know us, and we all know each other, and we're all helping one another get through life. That's really the idea of the village.
And I'm thinking of a mental picture that I got. It was an education for me a number of years ago. My wife and I went to Europe, and we did one of the river cruises up the Rhine going into Germany, and we did the west to east version of the cruise. So we were entering into that country land, and you are just immediately impacted by these old castles that are on every hillside, and you see them. I mean, they're just just less than a quarter of a mile apart. And when you really think about the evolution of mankind, once upon a time there were no countries. Every one of those castles was its fiefdom. And whatever community the lord of that castle created, and and maybe they would go to war with the castle next door over a lost goat or something, but that's how people survived. And it's helpful, I think, periodically to get some graphic reminders of how those dynamics can work. And I think this is a really interesting mindset shift that business owners and leaders ought to take to heart. What else do you do to try to hammer this home with the kind of company owners and leaders that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, this is all framed in the benefit that this is going to bring to them, right? So we have this word belonging. Belonging is a big word right now, along with psychological safety. And so, that's the area that I work in: servant leadership that empowers belonging with a village mindset. And so we want to belong to something. We all want to belong. And so stats now, data is coming out to say, what is belonging? Belonging is when we feel a sense of camaraderie and connection to where we work, that we're happy to work there, that we feel we have a purpose to work there, and that people value us and we value our people. And so when we get this is like the magic sauce in a culture, an organizational culture. And when we get this, it shows that people with our companies, our employees become 56% more productive. Sick days go down by 75%. We actually become 121% more profitable when we get like companies and employees that show high levels of belonging. Makes our companies more profitable and makes sure that people stay there longer. We're not having high turnover. And so I frame this when I talk to, I was like, this is what you want? You want to become more profitable? You want to become higher engaged culture? You want to lower you're losing your employees, lower your sick days? Yeah, then this is what you need. This is going to benefit you and your people.
Occasionally, I'll get into a discussion with a business owner that will hear something like that, and they'll say, well, that might work a place like ExxonMobil, but it's not going to work for me. And I go, well, why not? Actually, it could potentially be easier for you to implement than ExxonMobil to do it.
That's right. It is easier because you have less employees. You can be more engaged in an easier way. It's going to cost you less in terms of effort and time and energy to implement and to change your culture. So it's a lot easier. And so, when I think of that, I think oftentimes the leaders that we see now, executive leaders, they've been extremely successful in their business, and their habits and mindset got them to where they are. Right. That a certain way of seeing the world got you to this success. And it makes sense why you would think like, well, I don't need to change. This is who I am. This got me here. But is that book that we know, business leadership book of like what got you here won't get you there. And I think that's really what we're facing right now is this huge shift post COVID. Like things are different. And the people that adapt will thrive. But if the leaders, if they come and they're like, well, I'm not, we're fine. We don't really need anything. I've been successful. Like you're successful now, but in 5 years, you're really going to feel the pain of the choice that you made not to adapt 5 years ago.
I think the book you're referencing is by Marshall Goldsmith, and of course Marshall's got some great thought about leadership. I think we're going to need to put a bow on this, Jason.
Okay.
Any parting thoughts that you want to leave with people?
No, I think the way that I in my book is I talk about planting sequoias. And that's sort of a weird way to end a business leadership book. But I think that's the sort of mindset that we're in, right? Like our world is shifting. The next 50 years, whether we like it or not, whether we agree with this politic or that politic, we are facing some of the most unprecedented challenges that we've ever faced as humans.
Yeah.
And the next 50 years are going to demand a different way of engaging the world, a different way to run businesses. And younger employees want to work for companies and they want to follow leaders that are making a difference in the world, not just profitable, not just making them money, but are also making a difference in the world. That's what younger employees are looking for. So I tell people, plant sequoias. Like plant this tree, and it's going to take a long time to grow, but plant it now. As the Chinese proverb said, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. And so plant and invest in social investments, in purpose, in making a difference in the world. And as we do that, those leaders and those companies that are doing that now will be the leaders in 5 to 10 years. Look at the companies that 10 years ago invested in sustainability, CSR, DEI. Where are they right now? They're leaders in the framework of corporations. People want to work for them because they have their culture right. And so plant the tree now, plant the sequoia, make the investment. It's going to take a while to see it through, but when it does, it's going to grow huge.
That's a great reminder and a great word picture to follow. Jason, if folks want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can find me online. You can email me my email. You can go to my website, thevillagemindset.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, everywhere. You can find me on Amazon with my book, The Village Mindset. So I'm out there. Just search Jason Butler, and I bet you'll find me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today and taking time out and being here. Really appreciate your work.
Thanks for having me.
And folks, all that reference to those links and things are going to be in the show notes. So if you didn't catch them on the fly, we got them packed into the notes. If you'll just look down in the comments, you'll get them. I do want to remind everybody, we publish this episode on YouTube as well as your favorite audio streaming channel. So hop over to YouTube and look for the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. You'll find us over there. And I really want to encourage you to subscribe to that channel. Leave us a comment, like, thumbs up, thumbs down, whichever you need or feel moved to do is welcome. I do invite people to leave me a comment or get in touch with me if you've got an idea for a new episode and a subject that maybe we haven't covered yet. Would really love to explore that with you. So I welcome that comment. And for now, we're going to shut this thing down, say goodbye, and wish you the best, and I hope to see you again real soon.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.